Get it? Tories lost their overall majority after PM Theresa Map called a snap election last year. Boris thinks that for the Tories to beat Corbyn, it is fundamental that the government delivers on NHS funding. Boris Johnson ally Foreign Secretary Mr. Johnson, who was a vocal supporter of the Leave campaign in the run-up to 2015's landmark Brexit vote, is understood to believe the government must adopt the much-publicised pledge to spend £5.2 million on the health service rather than handing it over to Brussels. He made his remarks as hospitals up and down the country were feeling the strain following a sharp rise in the number of winter flu cases in the last week. Labour leader Mr. Corbyn made the future of the NHS a centre-piece of his general election campaign last year, and is keen to keep the subject at the top of the agenda. An ally of Mr. Johnson told The Telegraph Boris thinks that for the Tories to beat Corbyn, it is fundamental that the government delivers on NHS funding, and he will continue to make this argument until it happens. Boris Johnson says Mrs May must pump £100 million a week into the NHS to beat Jeremy Corbyn. Every poll conducted shows the NHS is top of swing voter concerns, and every expert says it needs more money. The cabinet will have to act, and the sooner the better. This isn't about the referendum, it's about listening to the public's priorities and beating Corbyn. Colleagues should move on from the referendum debate and start to focus on the future. Leave campaigners emblazoned the side of Mr. Johnson's battle bus with the slogan, "We sent the EU £350 million a week, let's fund our NHS instead." During the course of the 2015 referendum campaign, it was subsequently argued that the health service would benefit from a £100 million a week transfusion, and it is this idea which Mr. Johnson is keen for Mrs May to put into practice. Leader Jeremy Corbyn made sure the NHS's future was central to Labour's general election campaign. A group subsequently argued the NHS would receive a £100 a week transfusion from the money it previously paid into the EU, a pledge which Mr. Johnson is pressing Mrs May to honour. Another senior cabinet source has backed Mr. Johnson's stance, saying, "Boris is absolutely right, we must take the fight to Labour on the NHS. Remain or leave, it won't matter at the next election, it's what we deliver on the core issues like the NHS that will count at the ballot box. The sooner we realise that, the better." Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was yesterday elected head of the European Reform Group, an influential group of Eurosceptic Tory MPs, also supported the idea. He said, "It is clear the NHS is under strain. The chief executive of NHS England has asked for this. It is important that implied promises are delivered on by politicians. I strongly support what Boris is saying. It became clear to me campaigning during the general election that if we didn't have a good case to make on 2022 on the health service, we will be in real trouble." The £350 a week was a controversial claim because it took account of the money which Britain gets back through its rebate, an arrangement negotiated by then PM Margaret Thatcher in 1984. However, Mr. Johnson has subsequently defended the figure, and claims it will in fact rise to £438 million by 2020. He told The Guardian, "There was an error on the side of the bus. We grossly underestimated the sum over which we would be able to take back control." Thursday, June 23, 2016.